What happens when you take the spear and add just a little bit of extra funk? I'll show you what happened to me when I tried this funky build in the mists, as always with comments. After watching these fights, by the way, if you want to see the same build taken further, to do some limit testing with higher IP, let me know. For this video I bought 2 sets of this. We're working mostly with tier 8, but I got 6.3 cleric robe because I don't have specs in other cloth armors, just to make up for IP difference. Each set cost just about 1.8 mil in Brazilian. So let's see if I'm able to make any profit. I'll walk you through the build as we go. I went into the mists, and just like trying to gank mid for your Shadow Fiend or Zed player, I instantly found someone wanting to kill me. It's a 4-4-6-3 Bow of Badon. Generally, my plan on cloth armor is to do very little brawling and rely on damage from far. But against the bow, I'll have to make a bit of an exception. I'm likely still a good enough brawler in this matchup to force the issue. And if I stay far, he will outrange me and outdamage me, so I change to Harpoon and start catching some fish. My E didn't reach him, but he returned the favor and missed his as well. I'm glad he used Invis without me using boots, because now I can catch up to him after his Invis is over. You can see that even on cloth, I brawl kinda fine versus a bow. I use poison for this fight because I want to make sure that the next time I catch him will be the last time and I won't give him time to get away again. But unfortunately I miss my Harpoon. If he didn't come back close enough for my E here, he would probably be winning. But I get nice damage on him and I have my Cleric Robe ready for his final E. We start the run with a pretty decent payday. Let's have a really quick talk about the build as I'm looking for my next fight in the mists. Cloth armor in Albion amplifies all your damage but also makes you squishier. So I do more damage and I take more damage. The way that I can use this to my advantage is by doing my best to deal as much damage as I can from far with spells. If I hit my enemy more than they hit me, I can use my extra cloth armor damage without taking too much extra damage in return. For this game plan, Impaler works by far the best. But this also means that I have less catch because I don't have cripple. And I don't want to be too close to my enemy for those brawls. This is why I use Fiend Call. I need to have a purge and I'm expecting that I'm gonna have to use it from pretty long range a lot of the time. As for the cape, Avalonian and Tedford capes don't really make a lot of sense since I'm not trying to attack as much. So it's either Martlock or Undead, and I'm really hoping to bait in some of my enemies and then surprise them with the Cleric Robe, and Martlock cape works well for that as well. I mean, who is going to expect that a spear suddenly uses Cleric Robe and then also has Martlock cape, right? At least that's what I'm thinking in theory. In this mist, I dismount on another Turbulent Wisp and a very happy tier 8 overcharged spear player comes running. In spear versus spear fights, Impaler is generally more valuable, and luckily, as I just explained, I'm already on Impaler while he is on Cripple. He's on Pure Mist and Cripple. He absolutely should be forcing a brawl, but instead he kites me and then completely wastes his Assassin Jacket. This is the power of outfunking your opponent with an unusual build. When he finally does start the brawl, I have 3 spear stacks ready and he's on 0, so I can kind of safely fight him until I'm ready to execute him. After I purge his boots and he doesn't have Invis, there's no way for him to escape, and we can add another nice 3 million to the loot tab. I bank and then come across a 6-3 Prowling Staff on Armor of Valor. We walked together for quite some time with this guy, so he has had the time to figure out what to do against me. My plan is to do damage from far and only brawl when I have kill potential. And it seems that he understood that he was the one who had to close the distance and insisted on being a bit of a coward and starting the fight from invisibility to make sure he hits his W right away. And even after that, he's just walking away, forcing me to follow him. I don't approve of this playstyle, but it's a tough time right now to be a Prowling Staff player, so we'll cut him some slack and I oblige. After I catch up, he does decide to take the fight and uses his boots to get closer. After Polymorph, I E out, hoping to avoid taking his panther damage, but this fails because his boots are still running and that means he has the speed to catch up and hit me. Now I have no E and no space, and after he purges my boots, I have no more way to escape this, so I have to accept the brawl. And even though I'm able to block his execute damage with my cleric robe, that initial mistake I made means I've lost too much HP and no longer have enough time to try for any sort of a comeback. And this is another consequence of using cloth armor. Fights are faster. Whether I'm winning or losing, it takes fewer mistakes by either one of us to get to a point where the HP is just not enough to do anything anymore. But the build is exciting enough. Feels pretty good and unusual to be able to do this much damage with the spear. So let's see what the second set of the same build will bring. By the way, I only brought eel stew for this because both cooldown reduction and damage are exactly what I need for this playstyle on cloth armor. I'm not planning to brawl, so I don't play pure mist. However, it might have been an even better idea to maybe buy 8.2 beef stew and use a mist caller. With my second set, I suddenly noticed that more and more lower IP players were interested in me. Either I looked like a swiper or just an easy kill, but this tier 6 carving, for example, really wanted to take a chance, and I respect that. Even though it's a carving, I'm happy on Impaler, and he doesn't really have any way to win this fight. If he kites me, he will take a lot of damage from my Impalers and potentially Qs from far. If he brawls me like he ends up doing, he dies because he is 2 tiers lower. I hope in the future this brave soldier brings overcharge for this type of situation. In an abbey, I come across some disorderly behavior and decide to teach a quick lesson. The Badon player was going to get away with a warning, but decides to not leave the abbey and instead kite me around. This ends up badly for him because hitting your enemy with frost shot is both damage as well as a debuff and absolutely puts you into combat, which means that after he gets out of invis and frost shots me, he can no longer leave and instead gets an opportunity to donate 500k straight into my bank. Don't forget that it takes just 20 seconds to get out of active combat after your last damage or debuff, so if you do accidentally attack and you have invis, for example, you still have pretty good chances of getting out if you just hang around near the exit. One thing I want to point out as we watch the conclusion of this murder, one thing I learned while playing this build is that the Fiend Cowl is actually more difficult to use than I remembered. And this is primarily because of very limited range. The range is 9 meters, which is less than most mobility spells or dashes in the game, like the Spear E, Carving E, and a lot of other things. Which means that if you're not fast or if you don't press it at the right moment, it's quite easy that your enemy will get away and you will not be close enough to purge their boots. And of course, I didn't kill this poor tier 4 boltcasters, even though I'm pretty sure he had an 8.3 item on him that he probably looted from a chest. I guess I continue to look like a swiper in this set because a tier 6 Daybreaker wanted to fight me. He has Inferno and Cultist Cowl, which are both good choices against me. However, he decided to swap to Deflecting Spin, an absolutely unnecessary gamble. He can get lucky and deflect my Impaler for some decent damage, of course, but how easy is it for me to just wait out his spin and then use my spells? He should have changed to Impaler. Daybreaker is strong against the one-handed spear because of the way that spear stacks work. Whether I E through him first or he E's through me, I'm going to lose my stacks while he's going to maintain his. I make sure to use my E before getting purged, but accidentally create a bit too much space, which allows him to almost get away. Almost. Spear is not very good at dismounting in the mists, but being on cloth armor and Impaler both make it a lot easier, and I'm able to dismount him and finish the fight. I know that he's not risking much here, but I still have a lot of respect for players bravely taking such unmatched fights. After this, it was time to try some multi-way PvP when these two Boltcaster players decided to team up against me, which of course makes sense for them. I quickly discovered that my Impaler does not outrange their Q, and this makes it very difficult to kite away and do damage, because in cloth armor I will take a lot of damage in return. 1v2 in cloth armor honestly felt pretty impossible, and my only idea for this fight was to somehow abuse the fact that one of them is on Wanderlust, and that means he won't have the mobility to keep up with his friend. However, one of them decided to mount up and go dismount ahead of me to block me off from delivering the wisp, so I was able to use this time to kill the other. Spear is good at taking 1vx fights, but what I learned from this experience very quickly is how much more difficult it is to approach them when you're wearing cloth armor. This tier 7 claimer didn't want to fight, but I pulled out a good old "are you sure?" and it seemed that this convinced him to try. Also, probably the fact that I switched to Impaler. Against Claymore, I would prefer Cripple, because that weapon is so incredibly dependent on stacks, but Impaler is fine, like we talked about before. I do have Cleric Robe and Martlock Cape, but I need to be careful with baiting here, because if I'm not careful, he can almost instantly delete me with a 3-stacked E and Stalker Hood. He OC'd, so now we are both around tier 8, and he used his E to start the fight. Even though I purged his Inferno, he is winning this brawl. But I have a trick up my sleeve, and I use my Cleric Robe right after his Stalker Hood, because I'm pretty vulnerable and I'm expecting him to E. He's trying to buy just a couple more seconds for his E to be ready, but my cloth armor damage is too much. And once again, this shows us that cloth armor fights are faster. They take less time, and every mistake will be punished or can be punished more severely. I found a Deathgivers player who looks like he came straight from Roads of Avalon on his Swiftclaw. It's not a very good mount for the Mists. His build is standard though, except for the Tedford Cape, which is probably not as good as Avalonian, but whatever, it's fine. He really wants to pre-stack on mobs for a free E to start the fight, and I really don't want to let him do that. I do not really approve of insisting on starting every fight from an advantage, but what he does is fine. He just tries this trick once or twice and then comes to fight me anyway. It's also possible that I am underestimating my build, and he actually does have enough of a disadvantage to warrant this pre-stacking shenanigans. When he does finally start the fight, I am the kiter and he's the one who has to catch me. I am able to kite him long enough to get my 3 spear stacks, so when he does catch up to me, it's time to brawl. Not swapping to Sunder armor for this pre-stacking cheese now really backfires on him, because he brawls much worse and it takes him a lot more time to get his 3 stacks. I frost shield when he gets his stacks up and purge his merc jacket, and the fight is over. Once again, cloth armor makes fight pretty quick, right? I continue to look tasty, as one does, and so this tier 7 battle axe wants to try his luck. If you come into the Mists on tier 7 and you are brave enough to take these kinds of fights, make sure to bring OC, it's going to be worth it. Anyway, he can still definitely win this, but he makes a big mistake right off the bat by switching to Deadly Chop. This is a good lesson why learning theory of matchups is less important than understanding the reasons behind that theory. Battle Axe players are often told to swap off Adrenaline Boost because of Cripple, but I'm not on Cripple and not planning to use it. He would be much better off with Adrenaline here. And you can see that even though he's doing a very good job hitting his E's, I'm the one who has complete control over the spacing of the fight. He does not really have good tools to catch me and just has to hope that I give him a brawl against his Pure Mist Snapper and Battle Axe Sustain. In my next Mist, I come across a big 6-way fight, and after all is said and done, only me and this tier 8 Battle Bracers player survive, and we decide to duel it out. Keep in mind that Spear is one of the best counters to Battle Bracers because of how easy it is to interrupt their E with the one-handed Spear E. You just saw this interaction on screen a moment ago, how I interrupted his E, but check out what he does after he catches up to me. He hovers in the air to bait out my E and only then does his big damage. That was a great play from him because he is immune to CC during his hover, but not while he's already flying towards me. He still had Undead Cape and I still had Cleric Robe, so we were both kind of baiting and very narrowly survived this fight. Kind of unluckily I missed my last Impaler, but it's okay because we continue. Notice two things here. First of all, his hovering trick no longer works on me because now I kind of already know to expect it. And secondly, despite him not using triple kick on W, he still has a good enough mobility to keep kiting me and reset if he feels that the fight is not going very well. He goes for a reset here and there isn't much I can do about it. When we start again, he uses E this time without hovering, but since he does it from very far away, I'm able to react once again. By the way, if your opponent has a good defensive against one of your spells, it's always gonna be better to use your spell from as close range as possible. This applies to all kinds of different weapons, like Fists of Avalon, the Daybreaker, Dual Swords, Wildfire, and many others. He doesn't manage to create distance with Assassin Jacket, and I am somehow able to actually keep up with him now. I'm hitting Impalers for just about enough slow to more or less catch up because of my Eel Stew, and now you can see that he hits his E, which I have no chance to react to when he's doing it point blank. But I now have E to finish him through Undead Cape and the fight is over. After this, I felt that I've gotten enough of Cleric Robe Spear and I wanted to go out there and lose my second set. Hopefully to find someone higher IP and try my luck, but instead this happened. I honestly don't even really know what to say about this. It felt like I had ordered an awakened carving from Amazon and the delivery just arrived. If you just started playing Albion this week or this month even, or if you are hopelessly stoned, don't go into the mists with high tier and awakened weapons. Wait a little bit, you will have a lot more fun with the same items and same budgets in just a little bit of time. I banked it and went back, and instead of finding a high IP player to die to, I found this duo of Curse, Staff and Dual Swords, and learned once again that 1v2 in cloth armor is not a good idea. Since one of them got a bit scared and the other one was in Wanderlust, I was able to survive for probably longer than I should have, but in the end the Dual Swords did a very good job catching and staying on top of me long enough to help me finally find my well-deserved resting place. And our last remaining question is, so is Cleric Robe Spear profitable? I spent about 4 hours total playing this funky build and ended up with just about 19.5 million of new stuff in my bank. Subtract the roughly 4.5 million I spent on the 2 sets and consumables along the way, and we get a decent 15 million estimated profit in those 4 hours. So the answer is, based on this incredibly small sample size, that yeah, it's possible to make profit on Cleric Robe Spear and have fun with it. Let me know if you have some build ideas that you think you would really enjoy watching me play, and of course don't forget to like the video. See you in the next one. Peace!